Sometimes the scariest thing isn't what you hear, it's what you don't. Imagine walking into a home that looks perfect from the outside, but inside, something feels off. Everyone smiles, everyone acts normal, but the silence has secrets. And one woman, the maid, was about to uncover the kind of secret that makes your heart stop. Angela had been working for the Harpers for almost a year. The big white house on the corner looked like every dream home in the neighborhood. Green lawns, polished windows, expensive cars in the driveway. On the outside, it was a picture of wealth and stability. Inside, however, Angela felt something she couldn't explain. It wasn't the furniture, everything sparkled. It wasn't the people, the kids were polite. And Mr. Harper, the father, always greeted her with a forced smile. No, it was the silence. A heavy, suffocating silence that pressed against her chest every time she walked in. Angela had worked in many houses before, and she knew how families sounded. There should have been laughter, music, the clinking of dishes, arguments over homework. But in the Harper house, there was nothing, just whispers that stopped whenever she entered a room. One evening, while polishing the dining table, she overheard little Emma, the youngest daughter, whisper to her brother, "Don't say anything. Daddy said nothing's wrong." Angela froze. Her cloth hovered in the air. Nothing's wrong? The way Emma said it, like a command, like a warning, made Angela's skin prickle. She wanted to ignore it, brush it off as childish imagination, but something deep inside told her not to. Angela had grown up in a tough neighborhood. She knew the difference between ordinary family struggles and something darker. The next day, while cleaning the upstairs hallway, Angela noticed a door she had never been asked to enter, the father's study. It was always locked. Normally, she respected privacy, but that morning the door was slightly ajar. Curiosity tugged at her. She pushed it open just a little. The room smelled faintly of alcohol and something metallic she couldn't place. Papers were scattered across the desk and family photos were turned face down. It was as if the room itself was hiding. Before she could step in, Mr. Harper appeared out of nowhere. "What are you doing here?" His voice was sharp, nothing like the calm, friendly tone he used in front of his kids. Angela stammered, I was just dusting." "Stay out of this room," he cut her off. His eyes burned with a cold warning. "There's nothing wrong in this house. Do you understand me?" Angela nodded quickly, backing away. But her heart pounded. Why would he say that? Why insist there was nothing wrong unless there was? That night, Angela lay awake, replaying the moment in her head. She thought about Emma's whisper, about the locked room, about Mr. Harper's icy glare. She told herself maybe she was overreacting. Maybe it was none of her business. But then she remembered her own childhood. Neighbors who pretended not to hear when her mother cried behind closed doors. She remembered wishing someone, anyone, had cared enough to ask if she was okay. Angela promised herself, I won't be blind like them. If something's wrong here, I'll find out. The following week, small cracks in the Harper family's perfect image began to widen. One afternoon, as Angela folded laundry, she noticed Emma's shirt sleeve torn, not from play, but ripped as if yanked violently. On another day, she caught the older boy, Lucas, flinching when his father raised his voice. Even though the words weren't directed at him, Angela started paying closer attention. She noticed how Mrs. Harper avoided eye contact, her smile brittle, her hands trembling as she poured coffee. She noticed how the children stiffened whenever their father entered the room. The house wasn't silent by accident. It was silent because everyone was afraid. Then came the night that changed everything. Angela had stayed late to finish up the kitchen. The kids had gone upstairs, and Mrs. Harper disappeared into her bedroom. Mr. Harper sat in the living room, drink in hand, staring at the TV with dead eyes. As Angela stepped outside to throw away the trash, she heard it, a muffled sound from the basement. Not a TV, not a radio, a sound of movement, a sound of someone trying not to be heard. Her blood ran cold. She had never been in the basement before. In fact, she hadn't even seen the door unlocked. But now the faint noise was undeniable. Angela's instincts screamed at her, "Don't go down there! Pretend you heard nothing." But another voice, deeper and stronger, reminded her of the little girl's whisper, "Daddy said nothing's wrong." Something was wrong, and Angela was going to find out what. She approached the basement door slowly, her hand trembling as it reached for the handle. To her surprise, it turned easily. The lock had been left undone. The smell hit her first, damp, metallic, suffocating. Her eyes adjusted to the dim light. And then she saw, but before she could fully take it in, a voice boomed from behind. "What are you doing?" Mr. Harper stood at the top of the stairs, his shadow stretching long and dark, his eyes filled with rage. Angela's heart nearly stopped. She knew in that instant, whatever she had almost seen, whatever secret lay in that basement, it was the reason the family lived in silence. And it was the reason Mr. Harper would do anything to keep her out. Angela forced herself to meet his gaze. Her voice shook, but she spoke anyway. "I know something's wrong, and if you don't tell me what it is, I'll find out myself." Mr. Harper's jaw clenched. His knuckles whitened around the banister. For a terrifying moment, Angela thought he might strike her right there. But instead he hissed through his teeth, "Stay out of my family's business, or you'll regret it." And with that, he slammed the basement door shut, locking it with a final echoing click. Angela didn't sleep that night. The sound from the basement haunted her. The fear in the children's eyes replayed in her mind, and the warning in Mr. Harper's voice burned like fire. She knew one thing for certain. If she walked away now, if she ignored the signs, something terrible would keep happening behind those walls. And she wasn't going to let that happen. Silence protects the guilty, but courage protects the innocent. If you've ever seen something that doesn't feel right, don't ignore it. Speak, act, because sometimes the difference between tragedy and hope is one brave voice. The basement was locked again. The secret was buried. But the truth has a way of clawing its way to the surface. Angela couldn't erase the sound she had heard, the terror she had seen in those children's eyes, or the weight of Mr. Harper's warning. She knew if she stayed quiet, she would become part of the silence that trapped this family. And silence was no longer an option. Angela arrived at the Harper house early the next morning. She moved through the routine, making breakfast, sweeping the floors, folding laundry, but her mind wasn't on her chores. Every glance, every sound, every tiny detail in the house now felt like a clue. Emma avoided her eyes. Lucas barely spoke. Mrs. Harper looked pale, exhausted, her hands trembling as she buttered toast. And Mr. Harper, he carried himself with the same cold authority, sipping his coffee as if nothing had happened the night before. But Angela knew. She had heard. She had seen. That afternoon, while dusting the bookshelves, Angela caught Emma standing nearby, clutching her doll tight against her chest. The little girl's eyes darted toward the locked basement door. Angela crouched down. Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. "Emma, honey, is there something in the basement?" Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. Her eyes filled with tears she tried to hide. Finally, she whispered back. "Daddy said, nothing's wrong." Angela's chest tightened. That phrase again. Nothing's wrong. It wasn't reassurance, it was an order. A command drilled into the children's heads. She wanted to ask more, but footsteps thundered on the stairs. Mr. Harper appeared, his gaze instantly narrowing on the two of them. Emma bolted, running up the stairs, leaving Angela kneeling there, heart racing. Mr. Harper's voice was low and sharp. "I told you before. Stay out of what doesn't concern you." Angela swallowed hard and nodded. But inside, her resolve only hardened. That evening, after the Harpers went to bed, Angela stayed behind in the kitchen, wiping down counters that were already spotless. She needed time. She needed answers. Slowly, she tiptoed toward the basement door. Her pulse hammered in her ears. She had to know what was down there. She pressed her ear against the wood. At first, there was silence. Then, faint but unmistakable, the sound of crying. Not a child's cry. A deeper voice, weak and broken, sobbing in the darkness. Angela's breath caught. Someone was down there. The next morning, she tried to bring it up with Mrs. Harper. "Ma'am," Angela began cautiously, "is everything all right here? Is there something you'd like me to know?" Mrs. Harper's face froze. Her lips trembled as if words wanted to come out, but fear swallowed them whole. She glanced at the staircase, then back at Angela, shaking her head quickly. "Just do your work, Angela, please." Angela reached for her hand, but Mrs. Harper pulled away, retreating into her bedroom. The door closed with a soft click that carried the weight of despair. Angela couldn't bear it anymore. She decided to investigate when the family was gone. On Friday afternoon, Mr. Harper took the kids out, and Mrs. Harper left for the grocery store. Angela was alone in the house. Her hands shook as she pulled a set of spare keys from the kitchen drawer. She had noticed them weeks ago but never dared to use them. Now she slid one into the basement lock. Click. The door creaked open. The air was colder down there, damp and heavy. Step by step, Angela descended the stairs, her heart thundering louder with each creak of the wood. And then she saw him, a man, frail, bruised, chained to a metal pipe in the corner. His clothes were torn, his face hollow, his eyes bloodshot with pain. Angela gasped, covering her mouth to keep from screaming. The man looked up, his voice raspy. "Help! Please!" Her knees nearly buckled. Who are you?" she whispered. I'm Michael." "Her brother," he croaked, nodding weakly toward the ceiling, toward Mrs. Harper's room. He doesn't let me leave. He says I deserve this." Angela's mind spun. Her brother? Locked up like a prisoner? For how long? Tears stung her eyes. Why? Why would he? Before Michael could answer, the sound of a car door slammed outside. Angela froze. Panic flooded her chest. Mr. Harper was home. She looked around desperately. There was no time to unlock Michael's chains. No time to explain, she whispered fiercely. "Stay quiet. I'll come back. I promise." Then she bolted up the stairs, slamming the basement door shut just as the front door opened. Mr. Harper walked in carrying grocery bags. His cold eyes immediately landed on her. "You're still here?" Angela forced a smile. "Yes, sir. Just finishing up." He studied her for a long moment, as if trying to read her thoughts. Then he grunted and walked past. But Angela's heart wouldn't stop pounding. She had seen the truth now. The silence wasn't just fear. It was a prison. And Mr. Harper wasn't just a strict father. He was a monster. Angela knew one thing. If she didn't act soon, Michael might not survive. Sometimes the people who need saving are hidden in the darkest corners, ignored, silenced, forgotten. If you see signs of abuse or cruelty, don't look away. Be the voice they've been waiting for. Speak up, act, lives depend on it. Secrets don't stay buried forever. They whisper, they claw, they pound. Against locked doors until someone brave enough listens. Angela had opened the door. She had seen the truth. And now, no matter how dangerous it was, she couldn't unsee it. The question was, how long could she hide it from the man who held all the power? That night, Angela barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Michael's face, sunken, desperate, pleading for help. His words echoed in her mind. "He doesn't let me leave. He says I deserve this." Angela tossed and turned. She kept hearing footsteps in her head, imagining Mr. Harper finding her in the basement. She thought about Emma and Lucas, their eyes filled with fear, repeating the same chilling phrase. "Daddy said nothing's wrong." But everything was wrong, horribly, dangerously wrong. The next morning, Angela put on her uniform and tied her apron, but her hands trembled. Every step she took inside that house felt heavier, like she was walking on thin ice, waiting for it to crack. Mr. Harper sat at the dining table reading the newspaper, his sharp eyes flicking up whenever she passed. He looked calm, composed, but Angela felt the menace lurking beneath his calm smile. Mrs. Harper served coffee silently, her hand shaking so badly she nearly spilled. Angela caught her eye, but Mrs. Harper quickly looked away. The message was clear. Don't talk. Don't ask. Don't try. But Angela couldn't obey. Not this time. Later that day, when Mr. Harper left for work, Angela found herself in the children's room. Emma sat on her bed, brushing her doll's hair. Lucas was on the floor, stacking blocks that kept tumbling over. Angela knelt beside Emma. "Sweetheart," she whispered, "who is the man in the basement?" Emma's tiny hands froze mid-brush. Her lips quivered. You saw him?" Angela nodded softly. "Yes, baby, I saw him." "Who is he?" Lucas suddenly looked up, his eyes wide. "Uncle Michael," he blurted. Then, as if realizing he'd said too much, he covered his mouth. Emma clutched the doll tighter, whispering, "Daddy says Uncle Michael is bad. Daddy says we can't tell anyone, or else—" Her voice broke, tears sliding down her cheeks. Angela's heart ached. These children weren't just living in fear. They were living under a web of lies spun by their own father. Angela wanted to scream, to march into Mr. Harper's office and demand answers. But she knew what would happen if she acted recklessly. Michael would pay the price. Maybe Mrs. Harper, too. Maybe even the children. So she had to be careful. She had to be smart. That night, She slipped a piece of bread and a small bottle of water into her apron pocket. When the house went quiet, she crept down into the basement again. Michael's head lifted weakly when he saw her. His eyes, though tired, held a flicker of hope. "You came back," he whispered. Angela knelt beside him, sliding the bread into his hands. "Eat, slowly. Don't make a sound." He devoured the bread like a starving man, which of course he was. Angela studied the chains binding him to the pipe. Rusty old, but still strong. She tugged at the lock, but it wouldn't budge. "I'll get you out," she promised, her voice fierce but low. "I don't know how yet, but I will." Michael's lips trembled. He says I ruined everything, that I'm a disgrace. He says no one will believe me." Angela's eyes burned with tears. "I believe you, and I'm not leaving you here." Before she could say more, the floorboards creaked above them. Angela froze. Someone was awake. She quickly wiped her face, whispered, "Stay strong," and hurried back upstairs, shutting the basement door just as Mr. Harper's shadow appeared at the end of the hallway. The next morning, Angela noticed something terrifying. The spare keys, the ones she had used to open the basement, were gone from the drawer. Her stomach dropped. He knows. All day, Mr. Harper's eyes followed her like a predator watching prey. He said nothing, but the silence was more dangerous than words. Mrs. Harper seemed even more nervous, her hands trembling so badly she dropped a glass and shattered it on the kitchen floor. When Angela tried to help her, she whispered quickly, almost too soft to hear, "Please, stop. You'll only make it worse." Angela's throat tightened. Worse? How could it be worse than this? Mrs. Harper didn't answer. She simply shook her head and walked away, leaving Angela staring after her, her heart pounding. That night, Angela locked herself in her small bedroom, tears spilling down her cheeks. She wanted to call the police, but fear gnawed at her. What if they didn't believe her? What if Mr. Harper found out before they arrived? And then she thought of Michael, chained, starving, waiting. She thought of Emma and Lucas, forced to live under their father's shadow. Angela wiped her tears and clenched her fists. She couldn't stay silent. Not anymore. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't safe, isn't easy, but silence only fuels cruelty. If you know someone is suffering in the dark, don't turn away. Speak. Reach out. Be their light in the shadows. Evil doesn't always come with red eyes and snarling teeth. Sometimes it wears a suit, shakes hands, smiles politely, and tells the world that everything is fine. But Angela knew better now. She had seen the truth, and the truth was chained in the basement. The real question was, how long until the monster realized she knew too much? Angela moved carefully through the Harper house, but no matter how quietly she worked, she could feel his eyes. Mr. Harper's gaze lingered on her longer than before, sharp and watchful. Every time she passed him, her chest tightened, her palms grew damp. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. He knew. That evening, as Angela finished tidying the living room, Mr. Harper spoke without looking up from his book. "You've been busy, haven't you?" Angela froze, her heart thundering. She forced her voice steady. "Just keeping the house clean, sir." Mr. Harper turned a page slowly, his lips curling into a cold smile. "Good, that's all you're here for." "Nothing else. Do you understand me?" Angela nodded quickly. "Yes, sir." But inside, her thoughts screamed, "He knows. He's warning me. I'm running out of time." Later that night, Angela slipped into the children's room to check on them. Emma was asleep, clutching her doll, but Lucas lay awake, staring at the ceiling. When Angela sat on the edge of his bed, Lucas whispered, "Uncle Michael says he hears you. He knows you're trying to help." Angela's throat tightened. "Lucas, how do you know that?" The boy turned his head, his small voice trembling. "Sometimes when Daddy forgets, I sneak him water. Uncle Michael always says thank you. But Aunt Daddy found out once. He hit me." Angela's blood ran cold. She reached out, brushing his hair back gently. "You're very brave, Lucas, but you can't risk it anymore. Let me handle this, okay?" The boy nodded, tears sliding down his cheeks. Angela kissed his forehead, silently vowing that she wouldn't let Mr. Harper break him or anyone again. The next day brought more danger. Angela noticed bruises on Mrs. Harper's arm when she rolled up her sleeves. Purple and blue marks half hidden under long sleeves. Angela's breath caught. "Mrs. Harper, did he—" "Stop." Mrs. Harper's voice shook as she pulled her sleeve back down. She didn't meet Angela's eyes. "Don't ask. Don't say anything. For your own good. Angela wanted to scream. She wanted to shake her and shout, "This isn't living! This is surviving under a tyrant!" But she held back, for now. That afternoon, Mr. Harper came home early. He tossed his briefcase on the couch and poured himself a drink. Angela felt her chest tighten. He rarely came home this early. Why today? As she scrubbed the kitchen counter, she saw him through the doorway watching her again. His eyes weren't just cold now. They were suspicious, dangerous. Finally, he spoke. "Angela." She froze. "Yes, sir?" He sipped his drink slowly, never breaking eye contact. "Where were you yesterday evening?" "Around 9 o'clock?" Angela's pulse hammered. Her throat went dry. "That's when I was in the basement." I was in my room, sir, folding laundry." Silence. Then he set his glass down and smiled faintly. "Good, keep it that way." Angela forced a smile and nodded, then quickly excused herself. Her knees nearly buckled the moment she was out of sight. "He's testing me. He's watching every move." That night, Angela couldn't risk going to the basement. The danger was too high, but she knew Michael couldn't wait forever. His body was frail, his voice weaker each time she heard it. If she didn't act soon, he might not survive long enough for help. Angela made her decision. She had to call the police. But just as she reached for her phone in her room, a knock came at the door. She shoved the phone under her pillow and opened it to find Mrs. Harper, pale and trembling. "Angela," she whispered, "please, don't. If you call them, he'll know. And if he knows, he'll kill him." Angela's eyes widened. "Kill who?" Mrs. Harper's eyes glistened with tears. Her voice broke. "Michael. My brother. He's been down there for months. I've tried to help him, but every time I do, he finds out. And when he finds out, he punishes us. Me, the kids, even Michael." Angela's chest burned with anger. "You can't keep living like this. He's destroying all of you." Mrs. Harper shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "You don't understand. He's powerful. He has friends in the police. If you call them, they won't help. They'll just warn him. And then it'll be worse." Angela's breath caught. "No police? No law to protect them?" Mrs. Harper clutched Angela's hand desperately. "Please, if you care about us, be careful. Don't let him catch you. Promise me." Angela nodded, tears in her eyes. But inside, her resolve only grew stronger. If the police were compromised, she would find another way. One way or another, she would free Michael and the family from this man's grip. The next morning, Angela caught Michael's reflection in her mind again. Those chains, those hollow eyes, the silent plea for freedom. She knew she couldn't delay any longer. The house felt like it was breathing against her. Walls closing in, silence pressing heavy. Every moment, every breath, every look from Mr. Harper screamed one thing. Time is running out. Monsters don't always hide in the dark. Sometimes they stand in plain sight, wearing masks of respectability. But their victims still bleed, still cry, still pray for rescue. If you see signs of control, abuse, or fear, don't dismiss them. Be the person who listens, the one who acts before it's too late. Fear is heavy. It hangs in the air like smoke, choking everyone it touches. But courage is heavier because it comes with a cost. Angela knew she had to pay that cost. The children's eyes haunted her. Michael's broken voice begged her. And even Mrs. Harper's trembling warnings only pushed her further. The time for silence was over. It was time to fight back. Angela woke before dawn, lying in her small bed with her heart pounding. She couldn't shake the thought, if I wait, Michael will die. If I wait, those kids will grow up in fear. If I wait, Mrs. Harper will waste away under his control. She dressed quietly, pulling her apron over her clothes, and stepped into the still, quiet house. The halls were dim, the only sound the soft ticking of the grandfather clock. But beneath it all, she swore she could still hear faint sobs rising through the floorboards. From the basement. Angela gripped the banister, whispering to herself, "Not much longer, Michael. Not much longer." That morning at breakfast, Mr. Harper was colder than usual. He spoke little, his eyes flicking between Angela, his wife, and the children. Every time she looked up, his gaze was already on her. Emma barely ate. Lucas dropped his spoon twice. Mrs. Harper sat with her hands folded, tightly, eyes downcast. Finally, Mr. Harper set down his coffee and said, almost casually, "Angela, after you finish here, I'd like you to scrub the basement steps. They're gathering dust." Angela's blood ran cold. He never asked her to touch the basement before. Was this a trap? She nodded quickly. Yes, sir. But inside, panic spiraled. Does he know I went down there? Is he testing me again? When she finally walked toward the basement door, bucket and rag in hand, her palms were slick with sweat. She opened it slowly, stepping onto the wooden stairs. The air was damp, stale. The chains rattled faintly below. Angela? Michael's hoarse whisper drifted up. She bit her lip, whispering back, Shh, don't call me by name. I'm being watched. She crouched as if scrubbing, her rag brushing uselessly against the steps, while her eyes darted around. The lock on his chains, the barred window high on the wall, the cracked section of the basement floor, all of it imprinted into her memory. Listen to me, she whispered. I'm going to get you out. But you have to trust me soon. Michael nodded weakly, tears streaking his dirt-stained face. Please, don't let him kill me. Angela's chest tightened, but before she could say more, the door creaked open above. Mr. Harper's shadow fell over the stairs. How's it going down there? His voice was smooth, casual. Angela forced her voice steady. Just dusty, sir. Almost done. Her hands trembled as she scrubbed faster, praying he wouldn't come closer. After a long pause, the door shut again. Angela exhaled, her heart hammering. He's testing me every second. One wrong move and it's over. That night, Angela sat on her bed with a notebook she kept hidden beneath her mattress. She drew a rough sketch of the house marking the basement, the doors and the exits. She made notes about when Mr. Harper usually left, how long Mrs. Harper spent at the store, what time the kids went to bed. She wrote one word at the top of the page, escape. But the truth pressed heavy on her chest. She couldn't just free Michael and leave the others. The kids would still be trapped. Mrs. Harper would still suffer. If she made her move, she had to save them all. The next day, while Mr. Harper worked in his office, Angela risked speaking to Mrs. Harper in the kitchen. Ma'am, she whispered, you don't have to live like this. I can help you. I can get him out, and you, and the children too. Mrs. Harper's eyes widened in panic. She shook her head furiously. No, Angela. If you try, he'll destroy us. He'll destroy you! Angela grabbed her trembling hands. He's already destroying you. Look at Emma. Look at Lucas. Do you want them to grow up believing this is normal? Tears spilled from Mrs. Harper's eyes. She shook her head, whispering, I'm so scared. Angela squeezed her hands tighter. Then let me be the one who's not scared. Trust me. Mrs. Harper pulled away, covering her face with her hands, sobbing silently. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. That night, Angela made her boldest move yet. She sneaked into the pantry, stuffing food into a small bag, bread, cheese, apples. Enough to keep Michael alive for a few more days if her plan failed. As she crept toward the basement, she froze. A silhouette stood in the hallway. Mr. Harper. Late night, Angela? His voice was calm, but his eyes burned with suspicion. Angela's chest clenched. She forced a nervous laugh. I thought I'd get a head start on tomorrow's cleaning, sir. His gaze dropped to the bag of food in her hands. Slowly, his smile spread. Cleaning? With bread and cheese? Angela's blood turned to ice. For a long, suffocating moment, they just stared at each other. Then Mr. Harper chuckled softly and turned away. Get some sleep, Angela. Tomorrow will be important. He walked off, leaving Angela frozen, her heart slamming against her ribs. She whispered to herself, almost shaking. He knows, he's on to me. I have to act now. Angela returned to her room, locked the door, and pressed her back against it. Her whole body trembled, but her mind was clear. There was no more time for planning. The longer she waited, the greater the risk for everyone. It wasn't just about Michael anymore. It was about the children, about Mrs. Harper, about ending this nightmare. Angela wiped her tears and whispered into the dark. Tomorrow it ends. When fear becomes a cage, courage is the only key. But courage doesn't wait. It acts before it's too late. If you know someone is suffering in silence, don't wait for the right time. Sometimes tomorrow never comes. When a storm brews inside four walls, you can feel it in your bones. Angela knew tonight was the storm. No more planning, no more waiting. Either she'd free Michael and the family, or she'd lose everything. And she was ready to risk it all. Angela barely slept. Every tick of the clock echoed like a hammer in her skull. Mr. Harper's warning. Tomorrow will be important. Replayed in her head until the sun finally broke. through the curtains. At breakfast, she watched the family like a hawk. Mr. Harper buttered his toast as though nothing was wrong. But his eyes carried that sharp gleam like a hunter who already set his trap. Mrs. Harper's hands shook as she poured the juice. Emma whispered something to Lucas that Angela couldn't hear, and the boy's shoulders slumped. Angela clenched her fists under the table. This ends today. By late morning, Mr. Harper announced he had to run errands in town. Angela's heart skipped. It was rare he left the house for long. This was her chance. He looked directly at her before leaving. Angela, keep the house spotless. I'll be back before evening. And don't forget, the basement steps. His smile lingered too long, making her skin crawl. When the door shut behind him, Angela didn't waste a second. She raced to the kitchen, snatched the hidden key she had stolen days ago, and motioned for Mrs. Harper. Now, Angela whispered fiercely. We have to move now. Mrs. Harper froze, terror written across her face. He'll kill you if you stay, Angela snapped. Do you want your children to grow up chained like Michael? Emma and Lucas, who had crept into the hallway, stared with wide, fearful eyes. Angela knelt to them. Kids, listen to me. Do you trust me? Emma nodded quickly, clutching her little brother's hand. Lucas hesitated, then whispered, Yes. That was all Angela needed. She rushed to the basement door, key in hand, and unlocked it with trembling fingers. The hinges groaned as the door swung open. The stench of dampness hit her, mixed with something darker, blood, sweat, despair. Michael! She whispered, rushing down the stairs. The boy lifted his head weakly from the shadows. His chains clinked as he shifted. When he saw Angela, his face broke into disbelief. You came back? Angela dropped to her knees, fumbling with the locks. Her hands shook violently, but the key slid in. With a click, the first shackle sprang open. Michael gasped as if he couldn't believe it. Is this real? Am I dreaming? Not dreaming, Angela whispered, urgency flooding her voice. We're getting out. One by one, the chains released. When the final shackle fell, Michael collapsed into Angela's arms, sobbing. But the sound of footsteps above froze them all. Mrs. Harper's face went pale. He's back. He's early. Angela's stomach dropped. She had miscalculated. Quick, everyone upstairs, Angela hissed, dragging Michael up with Emma and Lucas close behind. They barely reached the living room when the front door slammed open. Mr. Harper stood there, his face twisted in rage, eyes locking immediately on Michael, free, trembling, alive. The air crackled with silence before he roared, What have you done? Everything erupted at once. Mr. Harper charged forward, fists clenched. Angela shoved the children behind her, planting herself between the monster and his victims. Stay back, she shouted, voice trembling but fierce. Mr. Harper's laugh was low and terrifying. You think you can stop me? You're just a maid. Angela grabbed the heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace and held it, out like a weapon. Maybe. But today I'm the one standing between you and them. Michael clung weakly to Mrs. Harper, who whispered frantic prayers under her breath. Emma and Lucas cried, their small bodies shaking. Mr. Harper sneered and lunged forward. Angela swung the poker, barely missing his head. The crash echoed through the house. His eyes burned with fury as he snarled, You'll regret that. A violent struggle exploded. Mr. Harper grabbed Angela's wrist, twisting hard, but she refused to let go. She thought of Michael in chains. She thought of the kids crying themselves to sleep. She thought of Mrs. Harper, broken and scared. And in that moment, Angela found a strength she didn't know she had. She slammed the poker against his shoulder, sending him stumbling back. Run! Angela screamed to the family. Get out of the house. Mrs. Harper grabbed the children, pulling them toward the door. Michael limped after them, tears streaming. But Mr. Harper blocked the exit, rage boiling in his veins. No one leaves, ever. Angela's heart pounded. There was no way around him, unless she went through him. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Angela could hear her own breath. The children's cries, Mrs. Harper's sobs, and Michael's desperate whisper, "Please, don't let him win." Angela tightened her grip on the poker. This is it. She let out a scream from the very core of her being and charged at Mr. Harper with every ounce of strength she had left. Monsters thrive in silence. They grow stronger when no one fights back. But when one voice rises, one act of courage, it can break the chains for everyone. If you ever feel powerless, remember, even the smallest spark can start a fire that saves lives. There comes a moment in every fight where you either stand tall or fall forever. For Angela, this was that moment. It wasn't just her against Mr. Harper anymore. It was light against darkness, freedom against chains, life against death, and there could only be one outcome. The living room felt like a battlefield. Angela's chest heaved as she gripped the fireplace poker, sweat dripping down her brow. Mr. Harper's eyes burned with fury, veins bulging on his neck. "You should have stayed in your place," he spat. "Now I'll make sure you never forget who owns this house." Angela's voice trembled, but her words were steady. "No one owns another human being. Not anymore." The family huddled in the corner, frozen in terror. Michael, still weak from his captivity, tried to stand tall beside Mrs. Harper and the kids. His trembling voice cracked the silence. "Don't let him win, Angela. Please, don't let him win." Those words fueled her like fire. Mr. Harper lunged forward, his hands like claws. Angela swung the poker with all her strength. It smashed against his arm, forcing a guttural roar from his throat. But his size and rage were overwhelming. He grabbed her shoulder, slammed her against the wall, and the poker clattered to the floor. Angela gasped for air as his hand closed around her throat. The room blurred. She clawed at his grip, her mind screaming, "If I fail now, they're lost forever." Mrs. Harper screamed, "Stop! Please!" But Mr. Harper only tightened his grip, his eyes wild with hatred. "You think you're a hero?" he snarled. "You're nothing. You're just a servant, and servants obey." Angela's vision darkened, but deep inside, something snapped. She wasn't just fighting for herself. She was fighting for Michael, for the kids, for every soul this man had crushed. With a burst of strength, she kneed him hard in the stomach. His grip loosened just enough. She shoved him back, gasping for air, and dove for the fallen poker. Before Mr. Harper could react, Angela swung the poker upward with everything she had. It smashed across his jaw with a sickening crack. He stumbled, stunned, blood spraying from his lip. Angela stood between him and the family, her voice shaking but fierce. "It ends here. You will never hurt them again." For the first time, Mr. Harper hesitated. His eyes flickered not with fear, but with the realization that his control was slipping. The leash he held on his family was snapping right in front of him. "You think they'll survive without me?" he sneered. "They're weak. They're nothing without my power." Angela's voice cut through like a blade. "No, they're nothing with you. But without you, they can finally live." The children clung to each other, tears streaking their faces. Mrs. Harper whispered through sobs, "Please, Angela, stop him, end this." Mr. Harper roared and charged one final time. Angela didn't back down. She raised the poker, swung with all the strength of every wound, every injustice, every tear she had witnessed in this house. The blow landed square against his temple. Mr. Harper crumpled to the ground, unconscious, his body sprawled across the floor. The silence that followed was deafening. Angela dropped the poker, her chest heaving, hands trembling violently. She looked at the family, their eyes wide with shock, disbelief, relief. "It's over," she whispered. "He can't hurt you anymore." Michael collapsed into Angela's arms, sobbing with a freedom he had never known. Mrs. Harper pulled Emma and Lucas close, kissing their heads through her own tears. For the first time in years, they could breathe. Angela, however, knew the fight wasn't finished. Mr. Harper was down, but not gone. And men like him, men who thrived on control, didn't stay silent for long. She turned to Mrs. Harper, her voice urgent. "We need the police, now." Mrs. Harper hesitated, fear flashing in her eyes. "But if he wakes—" Angela cut her off. "If he wakes, we're done. We need help before it's too late." The phone felt heavy in Angela's hand as she dialed 911, her voice steady but her heart racing. "This is Angela Jackson. We need immediate police assistance. A man has been keeping a boy captive. He's hurt. The family is in danger. Please, send help now." The operator's calm but firm voice replied, "Stay on the line. Help is on the way." Angela hung up, glancing down at Mr. Harper's unconscious form. The monster looked almost human lying there. Almost. But Angela knew better. Evil wore masks. It smiled at dinner. It tucked kids into bed. It pretended everything was fine. But underneath it was rot. And tonight that mask had shattered. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is refuse to stay silent. Angela wasn't stronger than Mr. Harper, but she was braver. And bravery breaks chains. If you've ever faced someone who thrived on fear, remember this. Courage doesn't mean you're not afraid. It means you fight anyway. And that fight can save lives. When the storm is over, silence feels almost louder than the fight itself. The house stood still, but inside its walls, years of secrets, pain, and fear lingered like smoke. Tonight, the world would finally learn what had been hidden here, and the truth would demand justice. Angela stood over Mr. Harper's motionless body, her chest heaving, palms slick with sweat. Every sound made her flinch, the ticking clock, the children's sobs, even her own breathing. Michael clung to her arm, trembling but free. Mrs. Harper sat on the couch, cradling Emma and Lucas like lifelines, tears running silently down her face. Sirens pierced the distance, faint at first but growing louder, closer. Red and blue lights soon flashed through the windows, washing the living room in colors that felt both terrifying and hopeful. When the front door burst open, 2 officers rushed in, weapons drawn. "Step back! Hands visible!" one shouted. Angela lifted her hands immediately, her voice breaking. "He's the one." On the floor, he chained the boy in the basement. "Please, you have to help." The officer's eyes darted to Mr. Harper's body sprawled across the carpet, then to Michael, thin, bruised, eyes wide with terror. In that instant, the atmosphere shifted. The truth was undeniable. Paramedics followed, kneeling by Michael, checking his pulse, shining lights into his eyes. Severe malnutrition. Multiple bruises, lacerations. "He needs hospital care immediately," one muttered, shaking his head grimly. Michael clutched Angela's hand as they lifted him onto the stretcher. "Don't let him hurt me again," he whispered, his voice barely audible. Angela squeezed his hand tight. "He won't, I promise." Meanwhile, Mr. Harper began to stir, groaning as the officer snapped cuffs onto his wrists. His face twisted in fury when he saw Michael being carried out. "You can't take him!" he bellowed, struggling against the officer's grip. "He's mine! He belongs to me." The room froze at those words. Emma buried her face in her mother's shoulder, sobbing. Mrs. Harper shut her eyes as if the sound alone burned. Angela's blood boiled. She stepped forward, voice sharp as steel. "He's not yours." "He was never yours. He's a child, not property." Mr. Harper sneered, his teeth red with blood. "You think you've saved them? You're just a maid. Without me, they're nothing." Angela stared him down, her voice steady. "Without you, they're free." The officers dragged him out, his curses echoing through the night until the door slammed shut behind him. For the first time, the house didn't feel suffocating. It felt empty in a good way. The silence that followed wasn't fear. It was relief. Mrs. Harper collapsed into Angela's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. "I should have stopped him years ago. I let it happen. I let them suffer. I was so afraid." Angela hugged her tightly. "Fear makes us small. But tonight, you and your children survived. That's strength." Emma tugged Angela's sleeve, whispering through tears. "You saved us. You saved Michael." Angela knelt down, brushing the girl's hair gently. "No, sweetheart. We saved each other. That's what family is supposed to do. Hours blurred. Statements were given, evidence collected, photographs taken. The officers led Angela and Mrs. Harper through every detail, their pens scratching furiously as the story unfolded. The hidden chains, the screams in the night, the years of control. Angela spoke with fire in her voice, refusing to let any part of the truth be buried. By dawn, the house was empty except for silence and shadows. The family was taken into protective care. Michael was rushed to the hospital, and Angela stood on the porch, staring at the rising sun. She had walked into this house as just a maid. She was leaving it as something far greater, someone who had stared evil in the eye and refused to bow. As the police car pulled away with Mr. Harper, Angela closed her eyes. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe fully. The chains were broken, but in her heart she knew the fight wasn't just about this house. It was about every silent cry behind closed doors, every child hidden in shadows, every person too afraid to speak. And Angela made herself a promise. This would not be the last time she raised her voice for someone who couldn't. Truth can be buried, but it can't be killed. Angela proved that one person, one voice, one act of courage is enough to drag it back into the light. If you see injustice, don't look away. Don't stay silent. Because silence feeds monsters, but truth destroys them. When chains are broken, what comes next is not just freedom, it's healing. But healing takes time. For Angela, for Michael, and for the family, the scars would never fully vanish. Yet in the quiet of a new morning, there was something even stronger than scars, hope. The hospital room was quiet except for the soft beeping of machines. Michael lay in the bed, his face pale but finally peaceful. He slept deeply, his body fighting to recover after years of starvation and abuse. Angela sat beside him, holding his hand gently. She had promised him safety, and now she could finally keep it. A soft knock at the door pulled her attention. Mrs. Harper entered, her face tired but different, lighter, as though a heavy stone had been lifted from her chest. Emma and Lucas followed, their small hands clutching hers tightly. Angela smiled faintly. He's strong. Stronger than any of us ever knew. Mrs. Harper's eyes brimmed with tears. Stronger because of you. If you hadn't... She stopped, her voice breaking. I don't even want to imagine. Angela shook her head. Don't give me all the credit. It was Michael's strength that kept him alive. It was your children's love that gave him something to fight for. I just refused to stay silent. Emma climbed onto the chair beside Angela, her little hand brushing Michael's arm. When he wakes up, I'm going to tell him he's my brother. He's family now, forever. Angela's throat tightened, and she blinked back tears. For the first time, this house of broken pieces was slowly stitching itself back together. News spread quickly. The community was shaken by the story of Mr. Harper's crimes, the hidden basement, the years of abuse. The boy no one knew was suffering right under their noses. Some neighbors were horrified. Some claimed they had no idea, but others whispered that they had heard things, seen signs, and chosen not to get involved. That was what struck Angela the most. How many people had stayed silent? How many had walked past without asking questions? She vowed never to be one of them. The trial came weeks later. Mr. Harper sat in the courtroom, shackled this time, not by chains he had used on others, but by the justice system he had long believed himself above. His arrogance had faded. His power was gone. Michael took the stand, his voice trembling but strong. With Angela by his side, he told the truth, the nights of hunger, the punishments, the darkness of the basement. Each word was a blade cutting through years of silence. Mrs. Harper testified too, her guilt laid bare, her voice breaking as she admitted the fear that had kept her from protecting her own children. And then came Angela. She spoke not with bitterness, but with fire. I was just the maid. That's what he reminded me every day. But the truth is, I'm a human being. And every human being has the right to stand up when something is wrong. That boy deserves freedom. This family deserves safety. And monsters like him deserve to face the light. Her words echoed in the courtroom, silencing even the judge for a moment. When the verdict came, guilty on every count, cheers broke out. Tears flowed, and Michael wept openly in Angela's arms. Justice had finally spoken. Months later, life looked different. Michael was gaining weight, smiling more each day. He laughed with Emma and Lucas as they played in the park, the sunlight painting joy across their faces. Mrs. Harper was rebuilding herself piece by piece, attending therapy, working to be the mother she had once been too afraid to be. And Angela? She stood nearby, watching them, heart full. She had once thought of herself as just a servant, someone meant to stay quiet and unseen. But she now knew better. She had been the voice that shattered the silence, the shield that stood against evil, the reason chains were broken. As the sun set that evening, Michael tugged Angela's hand. "Will you always stay with us?" he asked softly. Angela knelt, meeting his eyes. "I'll always be here for you. But more than that, you're strong enough to stand on your own now. You're free, Michael. No one can take that from you again." He hugged her tightly, whispering, "Thank you for saving me." Angela's eyes glistened. She hugged him back, her voice steady. "No, Michael. You saved yourself. I just helped you find the door. Evil survives in silence. It grows when good people look away. But courage is contagious. One voice, one act, one refusal to stay silent can break chains that seemed unbreakable. Let this story remind us. Never ignore the quiet cries. Never turn away from the shadows. And never forget, sometimes, the smallest spark of courage can light the path to freedom.